Alright, so where will the main crew resign to after the end of the series? This question was asked in the One Piece subreddit by user nappyhead48, and I think this question has a lot of answers because in One Piece there are a lot of places where the place has some sort of emotional connection or significant meaning to each Straw Hat, so there isn't really like one defined answer for really any of the Straw Hats, because obviously they are pirates and so they have explored a multitude of islands in this series, so they must have some sort of emotional connection to more than one place. So the answers for this are still very esoteric, very, hypothetical, and they could really honestly just stay as the Straw Hat Pirates. I mean, that is very much a possibility because they have been together for the past 2 years in the universe, so they've pretty much grown to be like a family for each other, so it would make sense that they would stick to each other until they all die. So that is totally a possibility, but we're just gonna explore the possibility that they all separate after One Piece ends. So starting with Luffy himself, he is probably like the most mysterious one in terms of where he would go after the series ends. I mean, he is a very free spirit, right? He loves adventure more than anything else. He loves adventure more than meat. He loves adventure more than the One Piece itself. It's his entire life. So I don't really see Luffy being a guy who would settle anywhere with like a family or something like that, especially because for you to have a family, you must also take up the responsibility, obviously. Because I'm pretty sure Luffy wouldn't like the type of people who don't take up their responsibilities. Having a family means that you will obviously have to take care of not only your wife or your husband, but also your baby. So I don't think Luffy would really like that, because the one thing he hates more than anything else is responsibility. So Luffy is probably just gonna stay as a pirate, honestly, because that's his life, That's what he chose to become when he was a kid, and that's probably what he'll forever be, because that's what he loves most. That's what he loves being. Pirates in his head are people who are free to do whatever they want, and freedom is the thing that Luffy loves. So of course, I mean, there is also the possibility of him also returning to Fuchsia Village, obviously, because there is a lot of meaning and emotional connection to him. That village has Makino, that village has the villagers that even though he doesn't like when he was a kid, he must have some fond memories of them. So there could be a possibility he obviously settles in his hometown, but the chance of him settling there, I feel, are very slim, because once again, he's a pirate, he's an adventurer, he's a free spirit, so he's probably just gonna stay out at sea, because I don't really see him in any other position. He's kind of like Simone at the end of Gurren Lagann. He's just a dude, his goal has been accomplished. He's found the One Piece at this point. He's found the greatest treasure, and he's now the most free man on the planet. What else is there for him to do? I mean, the next generation's gonna come, and there's nothing he can do to stop that. Matter of fact, he's probably someone who would support the next generation. So he'll just be a wanderer. He'll just wander the world as a free spirit, as the Pirate King. Now for Zoro is very different compared to Luffy. I mean, he's a swordsman first and foremost, obviously, so he probably would settle, unlike Luffy. Because if you guys forgot, Zoro is a pirate because that was the circumstances that he found himself in, right? If he had never met Luffy, he probably wouldn't even be a pirate in the first place, because his priority is being a swordsman first and foremost, and then being a pirate. Just like how adventure is Luffy's entire life, the sword and swordsmanship is Zoro's entire life, so that's what he trains to become, and that's what he is. So I could definitely see Zoro, after becoming the world's strongest swordsman, opening some sort of dojo and being a sensei, because he probably has that same mindset of you're not gonna be the best forever, and eventually the next generation is gonna come and take your place. So it'd be like this cool dojo sensei in either his hometown of Shimotsuki Village or in Wano. He'd also be naturally the type to stay in a place that has a lot of swordsmen or swordswomen, because that is naturally what he trains every single day. So he would like to stay in an area where he can train with the best of the best, which is probably Wano, provided he doesn't get lost, which is a very small chance. Now, unlike those two, Nami's situation is pretty simple. There is pretty much no place I could imagine Nami living in other than Kokoyashi Village, her hometown. This would be after she completes her map of the entire world, but the series only covers her adventures in the Grand Line, so I would imagine after the series ends, she goes on this like grand adventure to the places outside of the Grand Line, being all four blues and the Red Line, and after that she would probably just settle in Kokoyashi Village where she could live with Nojiko and Gen. She would probably also make some sort of orphanage because Nami has a lot of connection with children. She's very famously a really good babysitter, so I can definitely see her being the mother of an orphanage. Plus, she would love to have orphans there that never grew up with parents just like her, so that they don't have to go through the same things she did with Arlong. It's either that or she goes to Alabasta to live out her Yuri dreams, which could be a thing, I don't know. Usopp is pretty much in the same situation as Nami. I can't really picture him being anywhere else besides his hometown, Syrup Village. After returning as the quote-unquote brave warrior of the sea, he would probably just go back to the village pub and spend his days retelling the tales that actually happened this time. They're not lies. He'd likely settle down with Kaya and start a family with her, eventually becoming the protector of the village. Although with One Piece's definition of brave, I don't really know if Usopp would actually make it to the end of the series without perishing, because I think he's the type of guy that would think being brave would be like laying down your life to save the ones you love or something like that. So there is a possibility that he perishes for the sake of the Straw Hats or for the sake of someone he loves. Could be Kaya, it could be Syrup Village in general, anyone. So it's either he goes back to Syrup Village or perishes and becomes a tale that Kaya retells to children. Anyway, for Sanji, he's in a bit of a different situation because obviously, unlike Usopp and Nami, he probably wouldn't want to return to his hometown. So for Sanji, I can see two options for him. First is he goes back to the Baratier and lives with Zeff and all the other chefs there, since of course Baratier and Zeff hold a lot of meaning to Sanji, so he would miss it a lot and be homesick all the time, so he could just go back to the Baratier and live there, but I can definitely see a better argument for him living in the All Blue. Because the All Blue is a chef's dream, it is where fishes from all four blues can be found there. So why would Sanji leave when he finds it? I think Sanji would follow in the footsteps of Zeff and start a restaurant in the All Blue where all sorts of new and innovative dishes can be found there. He could also bring Pudding along because why not, she is also a great chef herself. So Sanji's endgame would probably just be him starting a restaurant in the All Blue, much like Zeff, and being a very successful, worldwide acclaimed chef. Now, unlike Sanji, Chopper is a lot less complicated. He's pretty much in the same boat as Usopp and Nami, where I can't really see him being in any other place besides his hometown, being Drum Island or I guess Sakura Kingdom now. Chopper would return to the Snowy Peaks to lead a world-class medical institute. This is obviously after he creates the medicine that is able to cure all diseases, and he would probably spend his days training the new generation of doctors to become the best of the best. Robin's kind of in a different situation to Usopp, Nami, and Chopper because obviously her hometown was sauteed, so she probably wouldn't want to live there. So for Robin, I can see two options, just like Sanji. The first one is she settles down in Elbaf. Because Elbaf has the library that contains the books that survived the Ohara incident, and of course being a general library in itself, Robin would love to live next to that library because that library contains the true history of the world, or at least parts of it. The other option is she follows in her mother's footsteps and becomes a traveling scholar, much like Luffy, but with a more academical focus. She would likely travel the world and visit various libraries and archaeological sites, finally being able to read and understand the true history of the world and the connotations of it without the fear of being hunted by the world government. Now for Franky, I can definitely see him being a settler because his priority is just in science and inventions obviously, so he would either go back to Water 7 where he can live with his family and the iceberg, or the other option, which I think is pretty cool, he goes to Egghead and lives with the surviving Vegabug members. Because Vegapunk is a band that he admires to an insanely high degree, he would love to be able to live with the world's greatest scientist and create things with him. Vegapunk himself also probably holds Franky to a very high regard, so they would love to work with each other for sure. Now for Brook, his final residence is probably the most obvious one. He doesn't have anywhere else to go but Reverse Mountain, obviously. Reverse Mountain is where Laboon is, and ultimately that is his entire goal, just to reunite with Laboon and tell him about his adventures and about the Romar pirates. So there really is nowhere else for Brook to go. This is pretty non-negotiable. Brook would spend his days in Reverse Mountain with Laboon, playing music for the giant whale and any travelers entering the Grand Line. Although, unlike the others, I don't know if Brook would die because, you know, we all know his circumstance, right? He's now a skeleton and, yeah, whether or not he dies is not within this video's topic, so we'll just move on. Anyway, the last Straw Hat is of course Jinbe, and like Nami, Usopp, Chopper, and Brook, there really is nowhere else for him to go besides Fishman Island. Although unlike them, his hometown would probably look a little bit different, because at this point in the story, Fishman Island would probably have resurfaced, because Jinbe's entire goal as a pirate is to fight for the rights of fishermen worldwide. He's basically the MLK of the Straw Hat Pirates, so his dream is equal rights between humans and fishermen, and for that to be established, Fisherman Island has to be on the surface where the environment is a mix of humans, fishermen, and other species. Because how can you fight for the rights of your people when the country your people live in is literally segregated physically? So Jinbe would live on a version of Fishman Island that has finally reached the surface and where the sun can shine on his people, both literally and metaphorically. Jinbe then would act as a statesman or a protector, ensuring the peace between humans and fishmen remains permanent. Anyway, that's my personal opinion on where each Straw Hat would settle to. I think this is the most accurate, or at least the ones that have the most arguments going for them. Although obviously we don't truly know what Oda's gonna do, so it could still be anything, you know what I mean? We truly don't know until the series actually ends, so all we can do now is speculate. But with that being said, if you like this video, consider clicking the subscribe and like button. It'll be greatly appreciated, and comment down below what you think. Where would the Straw Hats go to after the story ends and they have nothing else to do? Let me know in the comments. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.